Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So my name is Ibrahim Khatri and founder of Privizi Solutions. Uh, Prior to starting Privizi, I've been with management consulting, KPMG, EY, and PwC only in financial services. Uh, so the context of today's conversation is data privacy, right? I mean, the last gentleman who was talking about making money and not losing money, data privacy is a completely new thing that has come into India, right? We have never had data privacy compliance in India. And it became a fundamental right in India. Supreme Court judgment in Puttaswamy in 2017, but the law just got passed a couple of months back, right? And this is the highest penalty organization can basically have for non-compliance, right? And it's 250 crores. Okay, this is just a funny way to start. Organizations only have 1 year to comply, between 6 months and 1 year to comply, and privacy as a culture has never been there in India. We as Indians don't have privacy in our, we ask private questions. We stand in a line, we basically stand behind the person. We like somebody at the ATM machine, we go behind them. It's privacy as a culture is just not there in India, so it's a whole new paradigm shift that we are actually going through, right? And this is actually really worrisome for all of the senior management, board members, and organizations, right? So this is a small contrast. I'll just go through a couple of slides explaining what data privacy and data protection is, and then I'll get more into the regulation, right? So privacy is private life, family life, communication. You have, need to have that private. And data protection is that basically how how organizations are processing your data. There are algorithms that are actually making automated decisions based on the data that they have. There are biases in that, right? So all that basically comes under data protection. So the difference between data privacy and data privacy is having a private life, and data protection is actually having permission of the end users and protecting their interest and their data. 4 types of, I'm actually going to cover a lot of slides, so I'm going to go a little fast in 30 minutes that I have. So there are about 4 types of privacy: information privacy, territorial privacy, bodily privacy, and communication. Communication is mostly your telegram or your text messages or your WhatsApp messages, which are encrypted end to end, right? And they have a lot of regulations, right? Even post office, when you send communication mail, it's a federal law basically. You cannot open anybody else's mail. So we have those kind of privacy, but data privacy is not there in our country right now, right? So one second, let me go to this slide. What is personal data? I'm going to ask you guys a question, a couple of guys in the room. What do you all think is personal data? So any data elements through which you can recognize a natural person. So your name, sex, age, Aadhaar number, PAN number, your IP address also from your browsing history. All that is personal information, right? I mean, just to give you a small example, all of you all use Chrome browsers, right? You know the amount of third-party cookies that are there on your browsers. Are you guys aware of that? So organizations actually know everything what you're doing. Even if you're browsing another website, the previous website is actually looking what are you buying, what are you selling. Because in India, we don't have a data privacy law. So organizations are collecting how much ever data they actually want from you. So coming back to this point, what is personal data? Any information that basically can recognize a natural person would be a personal data. So even our IP address, as I mentioned, considers to be a personal data. Now, there are many different kinds of personal data, right? I mean, it's all about data. The only kind of data organizations want is more data, right? Because nobody can make a decision. Any C-level executives don't make decisions without data. So data has become the biggest oil for company, right? And during COVID times, especially, companies have gone out there and collected more data than they actually require from customers. They don't need it, but everything is going digital. So ask for that permissions, right? I mean, I won't take name of like some financial services apps that give loans, instant loans and stuff like that, but they ask for permissions such as your, your contacts, your your microphone, your camera, your photo gallery. I mean, they don't need your location history. Why does somebody who's giving you a loan need all that kind of permissions? But people actually give it, maybe not in Mumbai as much, but if you go to like second tier, third tier cities, when people give instant loans, they basically take each and every permission from these guys, right? So what we think of personal data is, identity data, financial data is like your bank account, insurance numbers, medical records, biometric, that's sensitive data. And then there are a lot of below the surface kind of data also which we are not aware of, which I spoke about, right? I mean, there are a lot of that derived. I mean, if you if you give an organization like Swiggy, for example, your data, they make personas out of you, right? What you like, what you don't like, and if you give them 5 data points, they make 50 data points out of that, right? So those are all below the surfaces, information tags that basically happen. So the Indian law came out in August. It got passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha on 11th of August. Just like how you have like a income tax department and what you're gonna, the government is working on a data board, right, which will be constructed in the next 1 year, and that will be auditing every company for data privacy. Because the whole genesis and context is that the data that organizations hold is not their data. It's our data, right? I mean, and they are just like the custodian of the data. So they're supposed to be accountable and responsible with the data, right? And they are supposed to have your consent at each and every step, right? So that's all in the making. You guys are going to see a lot of changes in the next 1 year with respect to data privacy, right? So India was the 138th country to pass the data privacy law. Europe was the first one and they passed a law called GDPR back in 2018. And before that, I mean, the fine for GDPR is about $20 million and 4% of global revenue. So GDPR is for European citizens, right? If you are processing European citizens' data, then you do GDPR. Indian is PDP Act, which is just got enacted, right? Which I said 250 crores is a fine for organizations if they are found to be guilty for non-compliance with people's data. I want to skip through this slide. So just what this slide actually talks about is 2017 it became a fundamental right when it got passed in Supreme Court, and it took about 6 years for us to basically pass the law. But finally the law has got passed on August, and within 1 year, in this winter session of the Parliament, we'll find out how much time do we have, organizations have. So every organization is scrambling right now to basically get complied with this regulation. This is the whole bill. I mean, this is very important and interesting for you guys also, because this is the whole bill I've tried to summarize in 1 page. Now, the reason why we have this bill is because of this data principal rights. Whose data principals? People like us, like we customers, are data principal. We are going to get certain rights when this law comes within the next year. What are these rights? The right is you can go to any organization and tell them, give me the data that you have about me. Any app you can go to or any company, and they are supposed to give it to you within 1 month in a machine readable format, the data that they have collected about you. As I mentioned earlier, you give an organization 10 data points and they will make 500 data points from you, right? With cookies, making personas out of you, your shopping habits, your browsing history, and they make, I mean, AI and analytics, that's what it's all about, right? So, but everything should have with consent. So what's going to happen is that every company's website or app, you will see a place where you can raise a request. Delete my data. I don't want you to have my data. I'm closing my account. Don't want to have this data. And we don't have that right now. And the scope of the bill is anything that is personal data, not any data, only personal data. They are supposed to have explicit consent from you. I mean, this is going to be a whole paradigm shift for companies also. So, for example, what I mean by explicit consent is that if you open a bank account, the bank has your information, that personal information. They cannot use that information to sell you a credit card information, right? Without your explicit consent. if you have given them explicit consent, send me marketing mails or send me credit card information, then only they can do that cross-selling. Otherwise, they cannot do that. Organizations right now sell data also to other organizations, right, without any regulation. So they will have to basically give you all those who are they sharing the data with and all that information. So it's going to be a huge paradigm shift, right? Just going to cut across this slide. There is a significant data fiduciary. All financial services, pharmaceutical companies are going to come under significant data fiduciaries. Significant data fiduciaries are going to have a lot of compliance burden, right? They have to appoint a person called data protection officer who is going to be responsible to manage the whole privacy program in the company, right? And why this data privacy has become so popular is because of the fine. You know, before the fine, organizations didn't care. The 250 crore fine has basically bought this as a C-level, chief risk officers and chief financial officers are now interested. Promoters of companies are asking, okay, what is this new law? Let's get complied. 250 crores, nobody wants a slap. And 250 crore per instance. Huh? So if you have multiple instances, you will have multiple crores, right? These are the various actors, people in the data privacy ecosystem, right? Data principal, as I mentioned, was people like customer data or employee data, right? Data fiduciary is somebody who collects the data and decides the means and purpose how this data is going to get processed, right? They are data fiduciaries. They are responsible for the data. Then they send the data to some third-party vendors called data processors, right? But if there's a data breach that happens here in data processor, data fiduciary will always be responsible, right? Data protection officer we spoke about. And this is a whole new subject, right? How organizations basically go through internal audit every year or, a stat audit, they have to go through data audit every year. Every year, organizations will have to show they have complied, how they have complied with this data privacy regulation. And it's a Bible. Huh? The regulation is not simple. It's huge. It's a new subject, right? It's a techno-legal function. There is people from every department, right, that basically data privacy touches. It's not only a technology thing. Data privacy is a legal function, right, because privacy notices, contracts, it's a legal issue. It's a compliance issue, right? It's HR. HR is, they collect a lot of sensitive employee data, right? So it cuts across human resources as well. Marketing, they are the most notorious people. Marketing people, they work in solos in organizations, they run campaigns, they collect so much data and organizations don't even know about the data they collect, right? The point I'm trying to get to is that data privacy is a new subject in India. It's a techno-legal function. It cuts across all different domains and departments of an organization. So the whole industry is kind of, it's a new industry that's kind of just like getting bred in India, right? So who is this Indian? So DPDPA. The full form is Digital Data Protection Act, right? Who is this applicable to? Is applicable to when the data is collected digitally, right? So physical form is out of scope. If the data is collected digitally, then it comes under the scope. If it is collected in India, or if it is, even if the company is abroad, right? If it's a US company, but they are targeting Indians, citizens, right? Then they will also have to comply. These are, all the things that organizations basically will have to do within 1 year, right? These are the obligations. I'll quickly, touch upon these because each one of these is extremely detailed. But starting with data breach, who basically goes to Domino's here? Orders from Domino's Pizza? Almost everybody, yeah. So Domino's data completely got breached, right? A couple of years back, and nobody actually knew. I mean, this was one of the largest breaches in India. So the context is that when an organization's data gets breached, right, they are supposed to let all the customers know within 48 hours or 72 hours when they get breached. Right now, without regulation, we don't even know. I mean, I'll send you all post this. I'll tell you all a website. Just put your phone number or email address. It'll tell you how many times your data has got breached in India. So, they're supposed to basically, if there's a data breach, then they're supposed to let the organizations are supposed to let the customers know that there has been a data breach within 72 hours. Consent. Now imagine हर एक level पे जहाँ पे आपने data already दे चुके हो, organizations basically will come back to you and correct consent at each and every step, right? Consent. Do we have your consent to send marketing mails? Do we have consent for this, right? You'll have, if you go to any European website like a British Airways website, you will always see a banner that comes and says that can we store cookies on your browsers, right? They'll have to take that and apply that, right? And it's a huge exercise. Imagine one customer, multiple consents across the whole life cycle is a huge exercise. Which other point, right? Children's data, right? I mean, children's data is going to be extremely important. I mean, organizations will not be able to process any data of children without their legal guardian or parents' consent, right? So you can imagine how difficult that is to take parents' consent at every step, right? So I don't know how that's going to work out, and that's a huge challenge, but we're going to see that, right? Data security, right? Data security, every organization will have to have great cyber security and data security, because you're only secured as much as your weakest link, right? So as I mentioned, all financial services is going to be significant data fiduciaries, and that's only because it's sensitive data, right? Financial data is always sensitive data, they'll have to have a data protection officer. Data protection officer is a completely new role. We don't have data protection officers in India. Data protection officer is a privacy expert and techno-legal expert, all around a kind of a person who works independently, reports to the board, right? Or compliance. It's a new role. Can you imagine how many financial services we have and how many healthcare we have or e-commerce we have? You need data protection officers for each one of those organizations, and we don't have any of them. So there's a lot of upskilling, reskilling, and certifications and courses. It's become degree also right now, where people are basically taking this subject, right? As I mentioned, all these significant data fiduciaries, which are organizations like your financial services, will have to appoint an independent data auditor and do a data audit every year. So organizations should only collect data with your consent only, right? That's number one. They should not collect any data without when they don't have a business purpose. As I mentioned earlier in my previous example, organizations are going out there and taking more data than that's required, and if you don't give them that permission, they'll say, okay, don't download the app. That's actually going to change, right? I mean, if they don't need that data for a business purpose, then there is no need for them to basically ask you for that data. It's illegal for them rather to ask you that data, right? Notices, yeah. So everybody in the next I'm assuming about 9 months to a year will receive updated data privacy policies from all the people you shared your data with. So your email boxes are going to be filled with like data privacy notices, because people have revamped their data privacy policies, and they'll basically take consent from you. They'll say, if you want to stop processing with us, then give us an option, right? So your mailboxes are going to be full with people, and all 23 languages, right? It doesn't depend upon only in English. Right now, we only basically get notices in English. The Indian government has asked organizations to basically give this in 23 languages in Schedule 8, and which is, again, a problem, but you're going to see that as well. Yeah, so you cannot do any targeting or behavioral monitoring for children, right, as I mentioned earlier. So Instagram is going to have a huge problem in India, because I don't know if you know, but the kind of content that they basically create, right, and they target especially girls and boys from the age of 12 to 17. That's the most vulnerable age, right, 12 to 17. And in Instagram, not only Instagram, but there are many other like social media kind of things which basically, they kind of, chase a dopamine effect in the mind, right? That people get addicted to that kind of scrolling and checking, right? So children, especially, that's going to change when this law also comes. They'll have to have verifiable content that parents have basically given permission to use certain websites and what have you, right? So that might happen in India through DigiLocker or some government is still working on those things, but we'll get some more clarity soon. Yeah, there's a grievance redressal method. So every company, as I said, the data protection officer is going to be the first point of contact. When we go to organization, tell them that, delete my data or tell me the data that you have about me, or you can tell them keep the data but stop processing. You can have all these rights. You have all these rights that you will have, right? If you are not happy with the organization, the data protection officer's response, you can have a grievance redressal method, and you can take this to court as well, right? These are some of the rights of data principles that we are going to have, that I've actually said a couple of times. I'm going to repeat that because all of you all are going to get this kind of option to basically exercise your rights, and you all should exercise your right, right? There's a fine of 10,000 rupees for mischief makers who just like start a conversation which doesn't have any depth in it. There's a 10,000 fine to individuals, but so right to access information about personal data. So as I mentioned earlier, they're supposed to within 25 to 30 days, organizations after you raise a request will need to give you in a machine readable format all the data they have about you. And this is a humongous task, right? I mean, an insurance company, take an insurance company or take any financial services, data is across the whole organization. They don't even know where the data is. If you ask them to basically delete the data, how are they going to delete it? I mean, they don't even know where the data is right now. So they basically have to do a lot of back-end exercises before they can do that, but that's going to be one of the right to access information that they have about you. And once if you all exercise your rights in the next year or so, you'll be surprised that the data that you've given people and the data that they have inferred from the data is it's like really spooky. Like you'll say, oh my God, these people know what time I shop, what kind of things I shop, what places I go to, my location. I mean, it's incredible. And then they basically use AI to basically make personas of what kind of person you basically are, right? I mean, and then send that information to advertising and marketing companies to sell you products that will basically be low-hanging fruit for you. You can ask for a right for deletion, grievance redressal. We've spoken. Right to nominate is very unique to India. You can nominate a person as your data listing after you die. So the other person will basically become responsible for your data. Yeah. Organizations will not be able to transfer. So data has become a national sovereignty issue, right? Every country in the last 4 or 5 years have come up with their own data privacy regulation. The only reason is that data has become oil has become cliche, but it's still like the best word that I think I can use, right? You cannot send data outside the country unless you have certain legitimate use, right? And you cannot send it to a country where organizations don't feel protected about their data, right? So for obvious reasons, a lot of countries like our neighbors and all, we won't be able to send data there. If you need to send, organizations need to send data there, then they need like special contracts and what have you, right? So this is the redressal method. Data subjects and data principals are people like us, like customers or employees. If we file a complaint, it'll go to the Data Protection Board of India. The Data Protection Board of India is in the making right now, and we will have an announcement before December 2020 or so, right? Data Protection Board will be created by then, the next 1 month. And as I mentioned earlier, you can go to appeal, court, and board. If you're not happy with the organization's answer response to you, you can take it further escalated to the court, Supreme Court, right? In a nutshell, there is a lot to do for organizations to become compliant for this regulation, and this is not a one person's job, right? So if organization actually wants to get compliant, they need to make a steering committee within the organization, and every organization is creating a steering committee within them, and they're going to have one stakeholder from HR, one from IT, one from information security, one from legal, one from compliance, one from human resources, one from finance, right? And all of them together basically will become, have to basically come up with a readiness exercise for data privacy, right? And this whole exercise, takes about 2 years, right? All foreign companies has given their organizations about 2 years to comply, including GDPR. But India is not going to give that much time because we have been talking about it since 2017. So we probably might get 1 year on the outer limit and 6 months in the inner limit. I'm going to stop here. I think that was a lot of information. I'll take some questions if you guys might have any. There's a lot of opportunity in data privacy and data protection, which is just opening up, right? I mean, so some people who are looking to like pivot with their careers, right? And financial services is definitely the biggest one, which is it's a highly regulated industry, right? So they are the first movers. They are actually started to comply. Fintechs, all these companies, huge opportunities in this company, right? And there's opportunity with every field, right? Not only technology, which people think. I mean, I would say first of all, just like be a little bit. Everybody should become a little bit more savvy of reading data privacy policies, right? Data privacy policies, when we just download an app and just press accept, accept, accept without reading it, because it's all like so legal language, right? That will all change also, right? So the whole idea after this law will come is that it's supposed to be like a little bit easy to read and not very legalese, because it's for normal people. It's not a contract that you're sending to a lawyer, right? So read the kind of permissions that you guys are giving. Go and assess the kind of trackers or third-party cookies that are there on Chrome, right? I mean, you will be surprised. Like there are thousands. If you guys have been browsing for a couple of years, you will see thousands of cookies there, right? So try to use like incognito or Brave browsers, where your identity is a little bit stuff, like, including your cell phones, right? Cell phone also has indefinite amount of trackers, and so download some nice security apps and kind of clean it up. I mean, that will really help you guys. It's from 50 crores to 250 crores, right? Depending on the kind of data breach that you've had. So if you don't have, so I'll give you one example, is that 250 crores, if you basically target children, definitely 250 crores. 200 crores. Yeah, it starts from 50 crores. If an organization doesn't have good cybersecurity controls, then it's 250 crores. So now every organization is basically running towards a solid framework, security framework to deploy it, right? Because that's a high fine. Yeah, I mean, it runs with fear. I mean, the only reason why organizations want to do this is because of the penalty, because without the penalty, nobody actually cared about data privacy, right? So fear and the penalty is what is driving this. Yeah, so you will see, if you put your email address or phone number in there, you will see all the places that your data has been breached and which time it has been breached, right? And this whole regulation, I mean, it's a whole paradigm shift that's happening globally, right? So US, take example of a US country, right? Such a matured country, they don't have a federal privacy law. Every state is coming up with their own law right now. So 10 states have passed a law there, so the market is growing there as well. They're talking about a federal law coming in the US as well, right? UAE, Saudi, I mean, just talk about the country and they're just like, everybody is doing it within the next 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years. China, India, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ibrahim. That was indeed a very interactive session. May I request you to come back if you would like to present you with your small token of appreciation, please.